Society loves categorizing people. We obsess over the jaded nature of Gen X and psychoanalyze millennials to death. Yet, nestled quietly in the gap is a microgeneration that entirely escapes the spotlight, a phantom demographic. If you were born roughly between 1977 and 1985, you exist in a psychological blind spot. You are a Xennial. You're too optimistic to drown in the apathy of the older crowd, but far too grounded to buy into the idealistic illusions of the younger one. You had a purely analog childhood, followed by a forcefully digital coming of age. And what nobody talks about is how this exact collision of eras permanently rewired your neurobiology. Today, we are decoding the hidden psychology of the Xennial mind. Let's rewind to a landscape that feels almost prehistoric today. Your childhood. You were raised in an era of unsupervised freedom, a time of hands-off parenting where boredom was just a baseline state of reality. It's the late 80s. You walk into an empty house after school. No location tracking, no text messages to confirm you're safe. Just you, your own thoughts, and absolute silence. You learned very early that if something went wrong, you were the only one there to fix it. Behavioral scientists note that growing up without a digital safety net forces a hyper-awareness of cause and effect. But it also forced something else: mandatory conflict resolution. When you had a dispute with a neighborhood kid, you couldn't just block their profile, mute their texts, or cancel them online. You had to physically face them the next day at the bus stop. You didn't have a digital buffer to hide your anxiety. You had to look people in the eye, read their body language, and navigate complex social hierarchies completely unmonitored. This cultivated a hyper-tuned emotional intelligence. You learned to read a room instantly because back then, your social survival depended on it. Then, during your most crucial developmental years, the timeline fractured. The digital revolution hit. Unlike millennials who were spoon-fed the internet from birth, or Gen Xers who were already fully formed adults, you had to actively rewire your own brain. You transitioned from card catalogs to search engines, from tangible media to the invisible web. Think about how you consumed information. Before the web, knowledge required physical labor. You had to actively seek it out. Because information was scarce and required effort to obtain, your brain encoded it deeper. Instant gratification was literally impossible. You grew up with the shared family computer in the living room, the screaming static of a dial-up connection, and the agonizing patience of waiting for a single web page to load. This enforced waiting period trained your brain's dopamine receptors completely differently than the generations that followed. You developed a profound, hardwired capacity for delayed gratification. Psychologically, navigating this shift forced your brain to develop massive cognitive flexibility. You became mentally bilingual. Juggling the heavy, physical world of your youth with the limitless digital frontier gave you a unique psychological framework. But that mental agility came with a heavy psychological tax. Just as you were stepping out into the real world, the ground gave way. You entered adulthood in the shadow of global panic following 9/11. You marched into the workforce just in time for the dot-com collapse and were finally catching your breath when the 2008 financial crisis wiped the slate clean. You watched the promised American dream glitch and crash right in front of you. This relentless economic whiplash fundamentally altered your relationship with authority. Because you watched the traditional corporate loyalty model fail your parents and then fail you, you developed a very specific brand of pragmatism. You don't blindly worship job titles. You only respect raw competence. If a leader knows what they are doing, you will follow them through fire. But if they are just a suit with a fancy title and no substance, you have zero patience for them. Instead of naive optimism, you developed a profound emotional shield. You hope for the best, sure, but neurologically, you are permanently braced for impact. You expect the system to fail because you've watched it fail repeatedly. This is exactly why your relationship with social media is so guarded. You use the internet as a tool, not a diary. You had a fully formed identity before the web existed. You understand the power of an online presence, but your analog survival instincts taught you that flying under the radar is always safer. For years, you might have thought this feeling of being stuck between two worlds was an identity crisis, a glitch in your timeline. But you aren't lost. You are the translator. Your hybrid mind has given you a hyper-vigilant mix of grit and adaptability. In a society that is tearing itself apart trying to balance the physical and the digital, your ability to seamlessly navigate both isn't a flaw, it's your greatest asset. If this breakdown felt like looking in a mirror, hit the subscribe button. We dissect the dark corners and undeniable truths of the human mind here every week. Leave a comment below with the one analog memory that built your resilience. Until next time, stay logical.